Hello students, today we will discuss about periodical essay in the 18th century. The essay as a literary form in English originated with Francis Bacon, and the periodical essay as a piece of journalism was invented towards the very end of the 17th century. It reached its apex of achievement early in the work of style and edition. It maintained a great popularity throughout the 18th century and this appeared about 1800. It was the blossom of the 18th century, only it withered away in the 19th century, and since then it has been waiting in vain for resurrections. The periodical essay passed away with the world into which it had been born, but in the 18th century it was popular genre and even more popular than the more heroic and the novel. The periodical essay was popular both with the writers and the readers. About its phenomenal popularity, A.R. Humphrey observes, if any literary form is the particular creation and the particular mirror of Augustan age in England, it is the periodical essay. First, the rise of the middle classes. The reason for its popularity in the 18th century is to be sought in the report which it had been with the genius of the century. It preeminently suited the genius and taste of the rising middle classes. With the unprecedented rise in trade and commerce, the middle classes amassed great wealth and began to vie with the nobility and the landed gentry. The new rising middle class was so far neglected by the highbrow writers. They had amused the upper class of the society, but now the middle class began to assert their status in the society. Next, brevity of the periodical essay. The periodical essay normally covered not more than two sides of folio sheet half. Quite often it was even shorter. Its brevity was an attraction for the reading classes. In the words of Jan J. H. Jack, not the least of the attractions of their new form was its brevity. The 17th century reader seems to have been able to read anything. The only brief forms with any literary presentations burst with wit. The increasing reading public of the 18th century brought a demand for easier reading, as Blackmore pointed out in the preface to his essays. The relish of diffusive pieces in these times is carried so far that great books are looked on as oppressive, while those in which the principle and as well as the sentiment of the author are contracted into a narrower compass, if will read meet with general approbation. Next, a faithful reflection of 18th century society. Jan H. Jack remarks, a modern reader who wishes to breathe the atmosphere of 18th century can hardly do better than spend a few hours with the tattler, spectator, canonier, and the citizen of the world. He will not find in them the spiritual peaks or abysses of the age. The scarifying satire tell of Tutov or the eloquent political insight of work, but he will find a faithful and well composed portrait of the age. In the vast papers of the Spectator, one finds descriptions of everyday life. The vivid reflection of Richmond and London in the country life are not only the feast of delight for the reader, but also enhance one's information about the type of life lived at a particular era. Next step is suited to the moral temper of the age. The main reason for the success of the periodical literature in the 18th century lies in the fact that it suited the moral temper of the age. In the words of W.H. Hudson, they set themselves as a moralist to break down to opposed influences that of the profligate restoration tradition of loose living and loose thinking on the one hand, and then of Puritan fanaticism and bigotry on the other. Their method was admirably adapted to their purpose. They did not indulge in sweeping condemnations and unqualified invectives as generally to the damage of their cause. The Puritan moralists habitually did, they wrote good, met all classes of readers on their own ground, and made ample allowance for the ordinary fallings of humanity. But at the same time, they consistently advocated the claims of decency and good sense. Next, appeal to women. Women were hitherto neglected in literature, but the periodical essayist wrote both for women as well as for men, and thus women won the interest and sympathy of the fair sex. Attention to the interest of fair sex became one of the invariable convention of the periodical essay. And there can be little doubt that the essayist did much to revise the general opinion about women who are treated with new respect and dignity. In the words of W.H. Hudson in particular, they addressed themselves avoidly and directly to women, and at a time when women in society were as a rule immersed in the mere trivialities of existence. They did their best to draw them into the currents of the larger intellectual life. They no doubt pointed out their follies and frailties, but with a view to improving the status of women in society. The women were also thankful to these essayists and read their essay with keen interest. Next, non-partisan character. Most of the periodical essayists were about petty controversies of religion and politics and focused their attention on topics of general interest. Though they were either Whigs or Tories in politics, yet politics were touched what Gingerlin edition stated in the first issues of The Spectator. I never espoused any party with violence, and am resolved to observe an exact neutrality between the Whigs and Tories unless I shall be forced to declare myself by the hostilities of either side. This stand in Nome first is reiterated in number 262 and elsewhere. Probably what was intended was promised to avoid attacks of Minister of State as well as to avoid the extreme party spirit then prevalent. The Tories were in power. Addition and Steele were put off office, and the Spectator papers were a sort of holiday exercise. It was a pleasure to avoid acrimony and perhaps to feel superior to it or latter. In this satirical portrait of Addition, Pope applied to him and partial compliment. The name of Cicero is not repartition friend. Ethics Addition was born to converse with ease and not to write political pamphlets. In all things, Addition and Steele advocated moderations and tolerations, and they were the enemy of enthusiasm. They wrote with a poise of neutrality which became an example of their successors. They dealt with deeper themes in a popular fashion: immortality, jealousy, prayer, death, and drunkenness. Next, interest in trade and commerce. In the early 18th century England, rapid progress in trade and commerce, a new merchant community came into the limelight, and periodical essayists made a special appeal to this community. By showing an interest in trade, Addition was one among the nation praises the merchant frequently and highly. The merchant is the true internationalist. He brings the culture of all the world to the Thames and makes mankind one. In the Royal Exchange Addition novel moved, I am a damned Swede on Frenchmen at different times, or rather fancy myself like the old philosopher who, upon being asked what countryman he was, replied that he was a citizen of the world. As I am a great lover of mankind, my heart naturally overflows with pleasure at the sight of a prosperous and happy multitude. in so much that at many public solemnities I cannot forbear expressing my joy with tears that have stolen down any cheeks. Edison sound merchant television did not normally give way to emotions so extremely, but in his day many in English heart were being warned by prosperity. Style of the periodical essayist. Most of the periodical essayists wrote in a simple, clear conversational style to be understood by their semi educated or unscholarly readers. They avoided individual whims, conceits, Britishism, and harsh words which could not be appreciated by the middle classes and the fair sex, who were among the main readers of the periodical essays. Wherever the periodical essayist like Dr. Johnson wrote a pompous, high sounding, and dignified style. He felt the Spectator had great popularity because of the style of Edison and style. Edison's style has always been a model for middle style. Its best economium was pronounced by Dr. Johnson when he wrote, "Whoever wishes to attend an English style, familiar but not coarse, and elegant but not ostentatious, must give his days and night to the volumes of Edison." Many of Edison's papers were directed against the coarser vices of the time, against gambling, drinking, swearing, indecency of conversation, cruelty, practical joking, and dueling. Some of the Spectator papers attacked the triviality of life, special follies and foulness of dress or manners or of thought, others the lack of order and comfort in the life of the community. Okay, thank you for watching.